The Rogue of the Rogue from Traptrix, Machina, and even Goki. What a regional. Especially the crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. The breakdown for the TCG Collector New Zealand regional out of, Christchurch, New Zealand is here for you guys. And I really wanted to cover this because the amount of Rogue that was present in this top cut is absolutely astonishing to me. Like, this is a whole nother level of crazy. We had two Brigade decks in top cut, of course, combinations of Lyrical Lisk with, basically the backbone Brigade deck to make sure we have that consistency that we all kind of know and love. Now, in terms of Rogue, we had one Traptrix deck in top cut, actually locking in a second place for this event, which is actually pretty insane when you think about it at the end of the day. I haven't really seen anything too consistent for that in the Rogue category in a while, but that's fine. We also had Earthbox or Earth Machina doing very well, locking down a third place. We had frickin' Goki getting into top 4. Gotta give a shout out here to his soul for being just one of the best cards. We even had frickin' Monarchs. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Monarchs as well in top cut. And you're just like, what in the world was this regional, ladies and gentlemen? It was evidently a really nice event. I also saw that we had Cyverse Eldritch, which is pretty cool. Last time we saw that concept was, what was it? It was a charity tournament, I believe, out of, it was somewhere in the US here. But that was an interesting concept. And then, of course, the other top list that we had for Rogue was Subterror / Guru Control. I mean, kind of, how cool is that? That basically an official event, you get to see all this tier 2 crashing on in here, and players just kind of stuck looking at this going, that's awesome. So hey, if you guys want to do well in other parts of the world for higher tier events, it looks like you can find success with these decks. So let's go take a look at those deck lists, shall we? Winning the regional here is Sam M's Bird Up deck list here. And the first thing that you're going to see, yep, it is the Lyrical List package. Yes, we are not playing the Barrier Statue. We got Triple Gamma 1 driver built into this. Apex Avion shenanigans, which pretty much all of us are used to. And of course, this deck is massively notorious for using Zeus and friends to kind of clear up certain situations. We are choosing to play the Harpies, Featherstorms in the side deck for this, which is absolutely fine. Kind of taking a look out of this, though, this deck is pretty standardized, and as much as I want to say, yeah, diversity, yeah, birds, these decks just kind of tend to look the same. The other interesting note is we've chosen 1 Crow over 2. I know 2 is kind of starting to become a little bit of a development over time. The good news with this is you also get to play the 1 copy of the Brigade Trap card. For this build, I actually think that that's kind of cool in the long run. But outside of that, nothing too crazy unique for winning the regional. All the Rogue decks here will be your real saviors for this event. Next up here is Traptrix. Yes, we are playing the Destroy Phoenix Enforcer package in this deck. That way we can make sure that we can control the situation. I mean, doing Traptrix shenanigans, setting up all of our back row to disrupt the opponent or parallel exceed plays, and then just ending on a Destroy Phoenix Enforcer for that extra level of protection, and then to follow it up into the next turn here, you just kind of put a nice little bow on it, and you're like, oh, by the way, I'm just going to go ahead and interrupt you, and your opponent's just going to stare at you and go, oh, I guess I lose. The thing with this deck is when this particular build pedals it to the floor, it generates a pretty large advantage gap across the board for the opponent. And I don't know, there's just kind of something about Traptrix in general that, I mean, I don't know, this deck just seems good. Also, Heavenly Lord of the Sky Prison here, just being able to protect all of your back row while your opponent's just caught with their pants down going, I don't know what to do about this. Next up here is Earth Machina. Now, for those of you that aren't too familiar with Earthbox, this deck basically uses the Infinitrack package, kind of turbos through an entire board. Makes a pretty good level of setup for most things that the opponent's going to have to deal with. Shout out to Metal Cruncher here, kind of being like that big centerpiece to make this deck do its thing. Outside of that, I think once this deck kind of establishes and kind of does its thing, I think a lot of players kind of are just extremely happy about this. I also kind of think, did this list forget to have the Ancient Gear box in it? Because we are playing the Ancient Gear link. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but most of these builds I'm used to seeing the Ancient Gear box included in it. So outside of that, standard Earth toolbox shenanigans. Make a board, laugh at your opponent, or, you know, have your opponent break your board. You pick up your cards and walk away. Nothing else really too good about this, but a heavy combo ceiling for sure. The deck. Next up here is Goki. Now this is actually interesting. We're playing 45 cards here. And I see that we are playing the Dragoon package in here. So basically, if I'm to guess how this deck works, we are basically 2 Goki monsters, makes a soul combo, and then a soul combo kind of starts the back burner of the deck, which will be the centralized engine. So you start milling off your very minimal equip engine, which should be what, like always 1 to 2, because you always want to pull out Headbat or Octo Stretch. We are playing the level 1. Okay, so it's the same thing. And then you just kind of climb up through the Zero Dawn Day package, and then you start building this pretty big board for your opponent to deal with. And you end on like what? Combination of like fog blades and things to kind of disrupt the opponent. It's pretty easy and straightforward for what you want to do with this deck. Alright, so shout out to Isolde for being the backbone still for those Earth Warrior toolbox decks that kind of get off of the ground here, and the opponent's like, oh yeah, I lose now. Next up here is Monarchs. Now, I see that we are playing the Philanderies spell card in here. Now, that's actually kind of cool. I believe that actually generically works with tribute summons. So if your opponent basically has something on the field that you don't like, you can tribute it away, if I had to guess correctly on that. Also kind of taking a look at this, I see that we have the Blue Heavenly Dragon up here. It's kind of seeing play in here. I see that the Pendulum Scales are in here so that we can basically draw some cards if we really need to, depending on where our combo is here. And then we're still domain locking our opponent. Yeah, this is still pretty much of the standard game plan that Monarchs have had for the entire existence of their life. They just sacrifice their extra deck and then basically play the game with breaking the opponent's field and then having interruptions through the opponent's turn. And Vanity's Fiend Vanity's Ruler is just that good of a card at the end of the day. Yay, disruptions. Next up here is Cyverse Eldritch. This actually got 6th place. Now, like I said, the last time we saw this deck, it came out of, what was it, a charity event. And then basically we use the Cyverse engine in this deck to kind of generate token advantage / draw power. Now, the fact that this deck actually gets access to basically being able to free link climb into something like Dagda to abuse Scythe is actually pretty freaking cool. It's actually pretty much the whole centralized point to this deck. Alright, besides, you know, draw power, go burr, you also get access to the Scythe to laugh at the opponent. It's a pretty cool concept in theory, how consistent this is. I've only seen this deck top twice in kind of its existence at this point being a thing. So that's kind of something to like keep in mind. Even though the success rate is kind of there, is the turnover? I don't think so, but this is probably one of the cooler Eldritch variants that we've seen in a little while. Next up here is 7th place. This is Brigade. Now, unlike 1st place over here, this doesn't have the Lyricalist package being that fundamental clutch that we've seen that this deck typically has. This version chose to play with the Rescue Cats here. I also see that we've maxed out on the triple copies of the Crossout Designator, so you can basically full interrupt your opponent and play the game. If anything happens to that cat, you're usually in a bad position, so being able to Crossout Designator any sort of level of prevention that the opponent could do, I mean, even stopping in Nibiru, like mid-combo, ensures that this deck can play the game. And I'm not exactly a fan of like having a massively fragile deck in my hands, because it's kind of what this version of this deck feels like. But honestly, I think the Crossout Designators do kind of patch some of the problems that this particular variant ends up having. Outside of that, it's pretty standard, right, for the DPE version of the deck. I think so. Nothing really too crazy about this version. And next up here is the Subterror Guru list. I see that we've maxed out on our absolute glue package here. We are not playing the Red Eyes Insight, actually, in this deck. That's kind of interesting. I feel like we did find better space for the cards because we do have the summon limits. We have the talents in here as well, which should alleviate for some of that. We have double TC Boo in here as well, and then the 6 Psalms. And then, of course, we're citing the double copies of the Waking the Dragon down here. We also have the Rivalries to board in if something kind of spins sideways, but our entire extra deck is pretty much patched for everything. Interesting to note, we are playing Prosperities over Extrav. Understandably, I guess, being able to pick those targets that we want to do and then being able to filter for the 6 instead of, you know, a random draw 2 is probably much better in the long run for this. So that is your breakdown for the New Zealand Regional. What do you guys think about? It's pretty interesting info, guys. Please leave a comment down below what you guys think. Make sure you guys smash the crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more Wallace content. I'll see your beautiful faces back here later, and there's some more Wallace content. Peace out, guys. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.